if you're sitting back and just, oh, these changes that are coming down the pipe, like they'll come when they come sort of mentality, you're going to be really caught off guard. The fundamental way that healthcare and health insurance is designed in this country is misaligned. It's not in the plan sponsor's best interest. It's not in the member's best interest or the patient's best interest. Every single vendor that you pick is a choice, and you can align that vendor to your success, or you can continue to get screwed. Rebates are paid by your sickest employees. It's not free money. Stop thinking about it like free money. The root cause of the inflation in the healthcare is the cost of healthcare. So if there's no controls around what are we actually paying for this claim, we're not solving shit.
Welcome to
The Business of Benefits is your no BS, no sales guide to real solutions.
No gimmicks, just the truth about how to take control, transform your benefits, and care for your most valuable asset, your people.
If you're tired of the same old sales pitch and you're ready to rethink your benefits, this podcast is for you. The truth is out there. Are you ready to hear it?
Hey everyone, welcome to the Business of Benefits podcast. I'm Austin Townend. I lead the marketing here at Ethos Benefits. And yes, you are absolutely right. I am not the usual voice you hear on the show. Today we're flipping the script, the format a little bit. So instead, we're bringing in a guest and we're keeping it in-house. We'll call you a guest, Chelsea Ryckis, our president and co-founder. The one you're most often the host, I would say. This is usually. So we're totally flipping things up on you guys today. And so we're gonna have a real conversation about what's happening in the benefits world right now. So there's no external guests, there's no agenda. It's just two people who live in this space every day talking through what employers actually need to know heading into 2026. So I'm excited to get into this with you, Chelsea. We've never done this before.
We've never done this before, and I have to say it is so nice to be on the guest side. Like, not have had to prepare, or, I mean, obviously we prepared a little bit, but not the same level when you have a guest and you're like trying to really structure something. So,
Totally.
Yeah, I'm already enjoying this. So thank you, Austin.
Yeah, good. I mean, I think trying to do different things on the podcast, we're trying to find everything that you the listeners really want. And so please, like and subscribe and do all the things, but most of all, it's the comments, it's the messages, it's the attending our webinars and different things that helps us know what you really want to learn about and what is the kind of content that you're looking for. So if you like this type of content where Chelsea and I are very open and transparent, more casual, then let us know because we'll do more of it. So this will be really fun. So today we want to get into maybe two large subjects, which is compliance for one. So all the things that have changed in the last calendar year or longer. Yeah.
A lot has changed. It's funny.
Sometimes
I'll say things like, you look at the compliance in just literally the last 12 months, and it's changed more than in the last 10 years.
Isn't that weird?
That's why it's wild, and it's such a cool time to be in our industry if you're up to speed and willing to adapt to the changes and use these as like leverage for new conversations. Versus if you are sitting back, whether you're a plan sponsor, broker, an advisor, if you're sitting back and just, oh, these changes that are coming down the pipe, like they'll come when they come sort of mentality, you're going to be really caught off guard.
Yeah, and it's been, you've been in this industry for a long time, right? And you've been in health and in benefits. And seeing this all happen, it feels like I would imagine, it feels like you've been sewing into these changes, right? Like not necessarily that you are the defining person making this happen, but like it's cool to see this message finally making an impact.
It's, you hit that on the head. Being part of the crowd of us that are like screaming from the rooftops, hey, this industry is problematic, right? Like the fundamental way that healthcare and health insurance is designed in this country is misaligned. It's not in the plan sponsor's best interest. It's not in the member's best interest or the patient's best interest. It's not even in provider's best interest. There's a lot of people suffering. And yeah, it's really, really, really cool to see it start the legislative landscape start to change in a way that's going to enforce all the things that we believe to be true, bringing them to fruition. And it's not even just about believing something to be true. It's about the fact that we have well over a decade worth of hard numbers, case studies, a book of business per employee per year that is way less than half of the national average. It's the proof in the pudding, if you will, of watching these strategies be employed and bring incredible results for so long. And it's like, it's hard when you know something works so well, and then, but all the behemoths in the industry are like, no, that getting to a point where it's plan sponsors are quite literally reaching out to Ethos Benefits now saying like, hey, you guys have been talking about this for a decade. A lot of people are starting to talk about it, but we've been hearing you specifically talk about this for a really long time. We trust that you are the experts in a lot, especially with like the fiduciary compliance under ERISA. Having people reach out to you as the expert on something is so cool, because it just makes me really feel like our business model was the right decision, 12 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you and Donovan really came up with a really, dare I say, thought leader idea, right? But an idea that was, this is a good projection on what this industry is going to be in the future, and we want to be ahead of it.
Yeah.
So that's been pretty cool to see.
But it wasn't easy. I mean, a lot of people thought we were crazy for a long time, or, again, the undermining of like, yeah, that could be important in 10, 15 years from now. And it's happened fast. It's funny because it's happened slow to us. Like Donovan, literally, it was 12 years ago ish, 10 years ago that I don't even know anymore, but over a decade ago that I joined the company, and he was telling me these health plan lawsuits are coming. And I was like, cool, maybe not cool, but
cool. No, I like that. I think that's the response. Yeah.
Cool. We know it, like shit's going to hit the fan. Why don't we be the guiding light that helps everybody through it and figure out, literally design a framework to design these plans in a responsible way. Members get better healthcare, better costs, and employers have compliance, and they get to do the right thing by their people. It's a win-win-win all the way around. Oh, and we'll be compensated fairly in a way that, is aligned with the plan sponsor. Wild concept, apparently. But it's just funny because it really was a wild concept, even though it's so simple at its root and at its source. And then now on the podcast with Mark Cuban the other day, I asked him, I'm like, I believe our business model is the model of the future. Like, do you believe that? And I don't remember what he said. Do you remember what he said?
The thing that just rings true for me is that I just have it playing over and over again. Like, bow, 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 is literally just when he says, Ethos is doing exactly this, and this is why Ethos is amazing, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, so exciting.
That's why I love what Ethos is doing. I remember being like,
oh. I know, I need to cut that out and just play that for us in every company meeting.
Put it right on our website, and that's the only thing. You know what else he said that I think was like probably my favorite part of that entire conversation? And if anybody has sensitive ears, please block them now, because I'm going to say exactly what he said. He was like, and I don't know if you cut it out of the show or not, because it's probably still in there, but he goes, if you are talking to a CEO and they're not understanding their fiduciary responsibility and they're not understanding the value that Ethos brings, he's like, just CC me on the email. I'll chime in and I'll be like, you're one dumb motherfucker. And I was like, wow, okay, we're going there. Like, let's do it. But anyways, let's get into compliance.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yes. Sorry, guys. Full circle here. We are going to be talking about compliance and a lot of things that have changed since 2025 and things that have been brewing for a long time, even before then. And also, we're going to be talking about trends. So these are things that we are seeing happening with employers, what companies are doing, what they're fighting, what they're loving, and things that you can kind of practically apply to your own company as well. So I think the first thing when we really talk about compliance and how things have changed in the last year is that big, beautiful bill. I mean, every time we say that, it's just fun. I have an abbreviation which has too many B's in it. I think when I first started, Donovan went on a tirade about the name of it even. So
yeah, he hated it.
Yeah.
But it's funny because everybody was like, this is going to change the world. I mean, I'm scared who's going to call me out on this I don't think that, I mean, it's cool. I'll tell you about what happened with it, but I don't think that it's changed the world, especially compared to the CAA of 2026 and the implications that that's going to have for specifically PBMs, the reporting, the transparency that plan sponsors are going to get. But nonetheless, the one big beautiful bill, really the big thing there was HSAs and direct primary care. So as a fundamental learning moment, let's talk about what an HSA is. Health savings account, tax advantaged. It's always tied to a high deductible health plan. Contributions are pre-tax, they grow tax-free, and then they're used tax-free for qualified medical expenses. Direct primary care is where the plan sponsor can pay for it, or employees can pay for it, but it's essentially same day access to a primary care physician. And what's really neat is that those claims stay outside of the health plan. So you're driving care to the direct primary care. The idea with it is you don't have to wait to get in. You literally can be seen same day. A lot of these places will do blood work and simple things, but the idea is that that primary care doctor understands how the health plan works and navigates if they need to be referred out according to the plan document, right? The business plan for the benefits plan, as opposed to a member has to wait 2-3 weeks to see a doctor, whatever they have going on gets worse, they end up in the emergency room, or they finally do get into a primary care after weeks of waiting and they're referred to, the hospital for an MRI. Those are the types of things that direct primary care is really good at avoiding. So how do these two things relate to each other under the one big beautiful bill? Historically, DPC, direct primary care, created issues because it's treated as a separate first dollar coverage, which would technically disqualify somebody from contributing to the HSA. So what the one big beautiful bill allowed is DPCs are now compatible with HSA eligibility. There are limits around it, but it does allow those fees for the DPC to be treated as qualified medical expenses, which is pretty sweet. Especially again, because you want to look at direct primary care as claims avoidance. It's a claims avoidance strategy. It's interesting to me because a lot of employers will look at the cost of direct primary care, and it can be anywhere, depending on the region of the country that you're in, between $70 would be pretty cheap, $70 per employee per month, up to $120, $150, sometimes more, depending on how robust the solution is. A lot of the times an employer will look at that as a true cost, right? A true expense. And if you have a few hundred, a few thousand employees, that is a cost. But what's really interesting is every single time we have seen massive claims reduction, specifically related to ER usage, usually up to 40%. And you can see that in the claims right away. And that alone, a lot of the times, you can see that will have that ROI. So anyways, it's basically employers can pair this lower premium, high deductible health plan with better primary care access, which was seen to a lot of people as really beneficial. I have other things on this. I don't know if you want them, but.
Yeah, we absolutely. I think two things that stick out to me with this is, I guess the first thing I really want to ask you is, why was there ever a restriction on those two things? Like, what's the correlation between DPC?
It's really just the HSA has a lot of rules around it with regards to, like, you can't qualify for a bunch of things if you're using HSAs,
right?
Because
you get a tax incentive, right? I mean, it's
right. So you can't double dip, or however much dip is really the core idea behind it. But here's the thing, the employers that we work with, and this may not be true across the country, the employers that Ethos attracts are not the employers generally that are using HSAs the way that most employers are using HSAs. If they're using HSAs, it's because their population is educated, knows how to use them. There's a strategy behind it other than lowering cost. A lot of plan sponsors and a lot of brokers are responsible for perpetuating what I believe to be this really BS idea, honestly, which is that HSAs are the best for people, because most of the time people cannot afford their deductible. And you don't have prescription coverage. You don't have any type of coverage. You're literally paying out of pocket until you hit your $2,000, $5,000, $6,000 deductible. That's insane. who do you know as an average working American, but it's always the lowest premium, right? So when you put those options in front of somebody, if they're making, 17 to $25 an hour, $30 an hour, especially now, fucking oil, like they're going to pick the cheapest plan. And then they go to use it and they're like, oh, wait, what? I owed this. And, everybody says you just have to educate. You have to educate. Okay, what does that look like? How are we actually doing that? I think it makes a lot of sense for certain companies. And, if you're a client of ours, we're going to talk through this because I see it over and over again where it's like, well, the high deductible health plan, that's the strategy. That's doesn't have to be the strategy if you have other cost containment solutions. If you have a real strategy, the high deductible health plan isn't the strategy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know that before it was just kind of a non-starter, but now it is where there's a $150 DPC fee or less, right? I think that's the restriction.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how that works exactly with like a fee? I mean, is that a monthly basis or yearly?
Yeah. That's monthly. And that's why I gave that range earlier with like the 70, the cheapest DPC I've seen is $79. And then the most expensive I've seen was around $200. And that's per employee per month. That's the monthly fee. And it's going to depend, right? Like, direct primary care I love it. Obviously, I love it. However, there are a lot of ethos clients where it's not the right fit because direct primary care usually requires that true direct primary care where you're actually going into a physician office and you're seeing a doctor requires that employee population base be quite centrally located. Whether you can use direct primary care networks that are already pre-built, or there's vendors out there where if you can place enough members and patients, like 20,000, 40,000, 60,000, 80,000 people, and you can guarantee this load where these vendors will actually build direct primary care facilities for that population in this area. That makes a ton of sense to me if everybody's relatively located in the same region. The issue would be when you have deskless remote workers all over the country, right? And you've got, 100 in Idaho, and then you've got 50 in Hawaii, and then you've got 700 over here and 600 over here. And you can do it, but it can be harder because if you have people in these rural areas where they're not going to have the same level of access, and you're on the open enrollment meeting talking about how great this thing is, and then they don't actually get to use it, so we have to create a different plan for them. Yes, I know I'm going to get hit up by vendors. There's obviously virtual primary care. There's on-site primary care, which I'm a huge fan of in these situations specifically, where if, part of the population can actually have a DPC access, but then maybe another population can't, you can bring it on site using mobile clinics.
Cool. Yeah.
That's super cool. We've done that before. And then again, there's the virtual component. So it's not to say that if you're spread out across the country, you shouldn't do it. It's just, you have to really think through it a little bit more. The other thing that happens with direct primary care that plan sponsors don't realize is if you don't really think about how you're setting it up with regards to claims and tracking, you will have a gap in your claims data. Because if you think about it, the idea is all the claims that are going to the DPC are covered under the membership. So those claims, that blood test, that doctor's visit, that's not hitting the plan, right? The plan itself those aren't coming out of the funds of the plan. Those are being paid through the membership dollars. But we still want to know those things are happening, right? We still want to be able to track the utilization on the plan and be able to see if something's impending, right? Like, are we having a lot of potential cancer screenings, and like, what are the results of those things like that? We need to be able to see that. You want to make sure that when you're designing it, whatever vendor you're working with can send over $0 claims with that code so that you can at least track the type of services that are being rendered. You can show that there's $0, but you're not going to be missing that information because that's super, super valuable information.
Yeah. And I think a lot with this big, beautiful bill was, pretty wild, but something that needed to happen maybe a long, long time ago, right? I think some of this stuff is just is rather basic, to be frank with you, about what the industry really needed. I mean, this came out Congress passed this thing mid 2025. We're starting to see it actually being, implemented. And even stuff like dependent care FSA limits that went from $5,000 to $7,500, which in the scheme of things isn't a massive number, right? I mean, that's the same. It's been 5,000 since 1980.
Jeez.
And so, like, if you think about like cost of living, quality of living, right, and how this changes over 50 years, some of this stuff is just crazy to me that we're
Honestly,
finally
all of
getting
it.
around to it. Yeah.
Like this, I know we're going to talk about the ACA premium tax credits. I know that actually is a little bit different. I'll put that in a different bucket. But like the CAA of 2026, the FTC scrutiny on the PBMs, all of that to me is so basic, and basic in the sense that not basic in the amount of work that's going to be required for all of us, plan sponsors specifically and PBMs specifically, but basic in the sense that this should have happened forever ago. And this is the bare minimum information that plan sponsors need to be prudent fiduciaries, which I know we'll get into.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, if you're an employer or if you're not a broker, let's say, listening to this, what I think is really, really fun is I would love to say that this is all scripted and I am telling Chelsea what to say, but I am literally just prompting things and she is ranting about the stuff that she is seeing every day. It's almost as if she is a subject matter expert in this topic.
You know what's funny is I don't know that anybody could tell me what to say. You said that, I was like,
really not me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, you're allowed to give me feedback because you hear me speak all the time, so I will totally take feedback from you. But yeah, no, none of this is scripted. And if I say something, I might say something wrong. There's a lot of compliance, and I'm no Jen Berman of Loomlight. So, but I do, do my best to keep up on it for our clients for sure.
What's fun with that, speaking of Jen, is we had her on a webinar a couple months ago, but we went to a conference in February, and her presentation was probably people were most excited and probably the highest attended or up there for the whole conference. And it was about compliance, which has to be the least sexiest subject on the planet.
It absolutely is. But she is a brilliant, what's the word I'm looking for? She herself is brilliant, but the way that she delivers this information, it's so engaging that it doesn't suck. And that's kind of always been my goal too, when it comes to talking about insurance or, in general, not just compliance, but like, can we deliver it in a way that number one, makes sense? Number two, doesn't suck. And maybe even have like a little bit of fun with it, because if we're not enjoying what we're talking about, like, what's the point, right? If we're not enjoying what we're doing, it's just like, but yeah, she's next level, guys. Anybody listening to this, if you don't follow her, if you're not signed up for her monthly webinars, those are fantastic.
Yeah, she's amazing. And I do think, as a caveat, we're going to start marketing all of our events as Doesn't Suck, which isn't a vacuum commercial or
so
any
what
problem.
I just did last week? I got, through LinkedIn, I had a business owner reach out. He is in one of the Midwestern states. He owns some long-term care facilities, and he scheduled a call with me, and he's talking about, it was such an eye-opener, Austin. Like, they're too small for Ethos. He has, I think, 40 or 50 employees. So I was able to connect him with somebody, but he was just talking about how his margins are tight, right? And like so tight, especially in that business. And that healthcare every single year is going up. And while he only has maybe 20, 25 people on his plan, he literally said it's the difference between whether or not he can stay in business or not this year. And when you have those conversations with somebody that's like, he doesn't have an HR, he doesn't have a CFO, he's running this business because he loves what he does, he loves the people that he serves. He was on basically Zoom in his car, driving from location to location to go and check in on his employees, hours and hours apart. You know what I mean? And like, he runs his own payroll, margins are freaking tight. And he was telling me that he's going to have to shut his business because of healthcare. And my heart was broken. It's like, because a lot of the times we're working with much larger companies, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of employees, and that's super cool. But there's some margin there a lot of the times. And not to say that one is more important than the other in any way, but it was a very interesting moment of like, man, it's so important what we do. But to bring this full circle, my introduction, I then spent the next hour of my time researching brokers in this state that don't suck. And I found somebody and I reached out to them and I basically interviewed him. I'm like, you cannot put this guy in a Blue Cross plan. You cannot put him with United. Like, I need you to do something relatively creative. I need you to get a little bit of data. I need to know that you're going to answer the phone for his people and for him. Like,
Yep.
I just went searching and found the perfect fit for him. And the introductory email was a subject line that said, intro to a broker who doesn't suck.
Love it. Yeah. It's like, there is certainly a masterclass to be had of good email subject lines, right? Like, how do we get someone to open
You're
the
the master in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I definitely get to experiment a lot more than the average bear. So there's that, but all right. Well, cool. Well, let's get into the ACA tax credits, because I think that's kind of a big thing that you touched on earlier. So, I mean, I know there's been some changes there, some practical applications, especially with the marketplace and how that's all affected, and how Washington has kind of redirected some subsidiaries, and the takeaway I think I understand for a lot of employers is that this is one of those external market shifts that'll make your benefits offering look more valuable, and to lean into that as much as you can. But I mean, what have you seen?
So the tax credit structure for the ACA actually still exists. What's interesting, like when you hear people say like, oh, it's gone away, not that you said that, but I've heard that a lot. Like, now that it's demolished or it's gone away, it technically still exists, and it technically could be restored, but the likelihood of that is low. But the enhanced subsidies, and that's from the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act, expired after 2025. So again, Congress could restore those enhanced credits or extend them even, but employers should probably be prepared that it won't happen, or act and prepare as if it won't. So this creates, and it hasn't obviously up until this point. So it creates affordability pressure. So I found it interesting that the words that you used, because you said it makes employer packages seem more attractive, or what was the word you used?
Benefits offering more valuable.
Valuable. Yeah, that's super interesting to me. So yes, it could, from the employee perspective. And I guess
it's a hard spin.
Right?
Yeah,
it's a hard
it's a hard spin.
But I appreciate it, because you're looking at it from the employee perspective of like, okay, this is more valuable. Also, just as a side note for plan sponsors listening, and you probably already know this, but employees shouldn't be getting major tax subsidies if their coverage at work is affordable. But nonetheless, we know that people will sometimes go on there and try to figure it out, and then it comes back later. But nonetheless, the lens that I look at this through is the employer lens, because I am an employer and because that's who I work with mostly. It's going to create some affordability pressure, and it's especially going to be if you're working like that company I was just talking about, right? With lower earners, skilled nursing, skilled labor. Those employees that were relying on that are now going to be looking over here to employer plans, and affordability is going to be the biggest thing. So speaking of affordability, so affordability is literally part of the ACA. So employers have to offer coverage that is considered affordable. What does that mean? For 2026, the threshold is 9.96% of household income. That's for employee-only coverage. So example, if an employee is earning, let's say, $20 an hour, they're working 30 hours a week, that's $31,200 a year for their salary. And 9.96% of that works out to $259 a month. So let's just call an employee-only premium $500. That plan is not considered affordable for that employee. So from a fiduciary standpoint, affordability, it's not just about like passing a compliance test, but it's like directly impacts whether employees enroll, access care, and can remain financially stable. So most again, I always say this, like, obviously I'm speaking from my perspective, but maybe other people are seeing that this is a bigger deal. I haven't seen in our book of business that employers are dramatically changing their contribution schedules or structures in any way as a result of this. They're just not. And I think that's because they already have a true strategy in play, right? That we're leaning on. Like we're just sticking to the plan. We're sticking to a 3 or 4 or 5 year plan, and that's working, regardless of the big beautiful bill, regardless of ACA premium tax credits. Like these are all really important things. But what's more important is the actual strategy for the plan, not these kind of like one-off things. But a little side note that I should have added earlier, plan documents need to be updated with the HSA DPC part of the one big beautiful bill. So if people haven't done that, I would highly recommend doing that.
Is compliance and documentation important?
No, not at all.
Yeah, we just had the biggest webinar on this, and if you guys haven't checked it out, I think it'll be on YouTube soon, so you can watch it there.
Yeah. There's one other thing I want to say about, and this one's gonna get me in trouble, and I love it. Come at me. When it comes to the individual marketplace, there's been so much hype around ICHRAs, and ICHRAs rely on the individual market for coverage. And if the enhanced ACA subsidies are not in place, individual premiums will increase, which can make ICHRAs less effective unless employer contributions increase. So employers that are using ICHRA as the be-all, end-all strategy, they need to reassess whether their contribution levels still allow employees to purchase meaningful coverage. How do I say this responsibly? I'm just going to say it how I want to say it. I am not a fan of ICHRA, and I get hit up all the time by ICHRA vendors that are like, hey, we're changing the world, one ICHRA at a time. And I'm literally like, no, you are a Bandaid. You are the same Bandaid that using an HSA as your base plan for low wage earners, like you're not actually fixing anything at all. The value proposition is there for certain clients, like actually the one I was just telling you about with that referral, that I sent to somebody else, like that could actually be an okay option for them, especially with the state that they're in, because the group coverage market there is really, really tough. But it's not this like going to save the healthcare ecosystem that all these people make it out to be. And I can't tell you like how over it I am of that conversation.
Of hearing about it. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, can you kind of explain what an ICHRA is? Obviously, I'm an absolute expert of all things and never need to be educated on anything. My wife tells me that too. She agrees. I need no new information at any point. But for everyone else, what is an ICHRA?
Sure. So it's an individual coverage health reimbursement arrangement. It's an employer-funded health benefit. It lets employers basically reimburse employees tax-free for using the exchange, getting individual coverage instead of offering a traditional group plan. So basically the employer will set like a monthly allowance, and the employees will go to the individual market through like a vendor of some kind, and they'll buy their own plan. They'll submit proof of coverage, and then the employer reimburses them up to the allowed amount, tax-free to both sides. And then the unused allowance will stay with the employer, which is helpful. And it was created in 2019, effective January 2020. So it sounds really cool, right? Like it sounds good, but there's a lot of, here's why I don't like it. Number one is cost predictability. Like you have the subsidies run out, the tax credits aren't restored, and now you have volatility in that market that everybody was obsessed with. Also, anytime I see private equity getting super jazzed up, like it's literally like a Shark Tank of ICHRAs the last couple of years, you see all this funding and all this money going into it. That's usually an indicator to me that like those businesses are highly, highly, highly profitable. And usually, that, not to say like a well-run business is a problem, not at all, or a profitable business is a problem, but I question the margins and the fact that they're not actually getting to the root cause of the inflation in healthcare. The root cause of the inflation in the healthcare is the cost of healthcare. And what I mean by that is, what are you paying for a colonoscopy? What are you paying for an MRI? What are you paying for Stelara? What are you paying for a surgery? That is the cost of care. So if there's no controls around what are we actually paying for this claim, we're not solving shit. We are jumping around, and maybe it'll work for a couple years. Maybe it'll work 1 year. And if you don't want to actually learn how to control the cost of healthcare, that's fine. Then, and honestly, I'm not even being sarcastic. Like, I genuinely mean that. There are businesses like that gentleman I talked to last week. He does not have the time, the resources, or the team to really dive into solving the healthcare problem, right? So that ICHRA might be a great fit.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things you touched on which are really important, is how it disproportionately affects certain size companies, right? Or maybe the income of those, the revenue of those companies, but also, the income of their employees, which are often correlated, right? And then also how the Bandaid piece, where it's not really a solution to the overarching problem, which I think really ties into some of the stuff we're seeing with CAA and the PBM scrutiny side of things, right?
Yes.
I think that's maybe a good transition actually for this, is how that's affecting PBMs. I'm assuming most people listening to this understand the pharmacy model of this side of the business and how PBMs are involved, but just in case, let's explain what PBMs and what their role is.
Yeah, the PBM is the pharmacy benefit manager. So every single health plan, whether you buy it as a package from Blue Cross, United, Aetna, Cigna, Kaiser, your local regional player, or you build it like we do from the ground up with custom vendors, every single health plan has the same pieces. And a PBM is one of those really 4 fundamental pieces. The other pieces that we won't talk about today, but just to fill that knowledge gap, if anybody has it, would be stop loss insurance, a TPA, and a network, which is optional. But the pharmacy benefit manager is without a doubt a huge piece of an employee health plan. So they are responsible for determining the formulary, the price of drugs, what the employee is going to pay at the counter. The issue, when they first came out, decades and decades ago, it was actually in the plan sponsor's best interest. It
was a good thing, right?
It was a good thing, yeah. It was supposed to lower the cost of prescriptions for plan sponsors. But over time, they realized how much margin exists and that there weren't really parameters in place where they had to follow any specific set of rules. So they made their own. And the rules that they made don't serve the plan sponsors. That in 2022 was really when we talk about the FTC, so that's the Federal Trade Commission, right? That's when they opened their formal inquiry into some of the business practices of the 6 largest PBMs. So specifically, that's Caremark, ESI, which is Express Scripts, Optum RX, Humana Pharmacy Solutions, Prime Therapeutics, and Med Impact, and then 3 GPOs, which are group purchasing organizations. Several of the PBMs actually delayed or refused to comply with the document requests. And yeah, that anytime, by the way, can we just caveat for a second from this conversation too, if plan sponsors listening, if you ask anybody in your health plan for anything and there is refusal, especially when it's to do with compliance, can we just talk about that's an obvious red flag, but also why do you maintain that relationship? Yeah. Like, you've heard me complain about this, Austin, but is that not enough?
Yeah. I mean, what are you hiding, right? I mean, what do you not want to explain? What are you up to?
Yes. And then the next question would be, and maybe this is too aggressive, but to flip the script and look in the mirror, if I asked somebody for something and that I needed to be compliant with the law, let's say a compensation disclosure, if I asked my broker for a compensation disclosure and they're not willing to give it to me, at some point it's less about, okay, that person or that entity is obviously doing something shady that they're not willing to share, or they don't know what the hell they're doing, which is also a problem for me. But at some point, it's less about them. And I need to look in the mirror and be like, what am I not willing to do? And I understand that there's politics, right? Like maybe an HR director or CFO is the one asking for these things and they're not being given it to them. And they know that we should terminate that relationship or we should report them. That's actually what you're supposed to do. By the way, if you don't get that within 60 days of request, you are supposed to terminate the relationship and report it to the DOL.
And 60 days seems really long too, to be frank with you. Yeah.
Thank you. So that's another, oh man, I hate that I'm ranting, but I'm just going to keep going because I'm also fired up about this recently.
It's what the people want, Chelsea. Let's get into
what the people want. We had a prospect ask their incumbent brokerage for something simple, like some PBM reporting. They were charged a fee to get it, which was outrageous because it's their own data. And it took almost 2 months.
It's crazy.
It's a hard red flag. I know that's not really a term, but it should be. Anyways, the first interim report for the FTC came out in July of 2024, and it was called The Powerful Middlemen Inflating Drug Costs and Squeezing Main Street Pharmacies. So that was kind of the first piece of it. And they found that basically those 6 PBMs that I mentioned earlier control 95% of US prescriptions. There's a few of them, 3 of them we call the big 3, Caremark, Express Scripts, and Optum. They alone process 80% of the 6.6 billion prescriptions filled annually. Talk about market share. So, and then, not to mention, the report also talked about like vertical integration or consolidation between the PBMs, the insurance carriers, et cetera, and pharmacies, which is a huge problem. So the second report came out in January of 2025, and that was about specialty and generic drugs. And that they were, the 3 big PBMs were marking up specialty generic drugs, specifically cancer, HIV, MS, leukemia, by hundreds to thousands of percents, which we see quite literally every single day. But that was generating over 7.3 billion in excess revenue through 2017 and 2022. Needless to say, the bad practices on the PBM side are rampant. We used to have a slide that showed like 49 ways that PBMs hide money in our presentations. And it was just absolutely wild. But the biggest one, the most obvious one that people understand is called spread pricing. It's the difference between what the employee pays at the counter and then what hits the plan. And a lot of the times that's where PBMs are really making the money. So there's been some enforcement through this FTC investigations. The big one that I want to talk about is the one this year on February 4th with Express Scripts. So the Express Scripts settlement, Express Scripts agreed to like fundamentally basically change their business practices. The cool thing is that all of this was happening at the same time that the CAA of 2026 was coming out, literally at the same time. And the CAA of 2026, that's the Consolidated Appropriations Act, had a huge section to do with PBM reform. Not to mention, there's other PBM reform in the works. It's all very, very similar, and it's interesting that it's all coming to a head at the same time. But the ESI settlement, basically they needed to transition retail pharmacy contracts to a transparent acquisition cost plus a dispensing fee model, which is really cool. And that's a lot of what Mark Cuban's doing with cost plus drugs, right? It's that wholesale price plus a dispensing fee. They needed to disclose kickbacks to brokers, ensure compliance with price transparency laws, and they needed to reshore the Ascent GPO from Switzerland, which would return $750 billion in purchasing activity into the US. But interestingly, no monetary penalty was imposed, which I thought was interesting. And the settlement requires implementation by January 1st, 2027. They're still in active litigation with the other 2, Caremark and Optum, on the same premise, but we haven't seen the rest of that yet. So between the CAA 2026, the FTC settlement, what that all means for plan sponsors is your PBM contracts are going to dramatically change. And really what I think it means, just to oversimplify it, plan sponsors you need to work with a fiduciary PBM. End of story.
Yeah.
Full stop. Period. Like, you don't need, and rebates are no longer going to be the thing that they were at all. So like that whole game of the rebate game and the shiny distraction over here, like, hey, look what you're going to get paid monthly or quarterly. Again, and the other thing, like Mark Cuban said it on our show, rebates are paid by your sickest employees. It's not free money. Stop thinking about it like free money. Imagine if you were just paying the right cost for that drug to begin with, plus whatever administrative fee needs to be attached to it for the PBM. That's reasonable. You know what I mean?
Is the rebates, is that on the formulary side of things? Or are those disconnected?
Yeah, they're very connected, because basically what happens is PBMs are influenced by the fact that rebates
By the
happen.
pharmacy.
Yes, and then we'll buy the manufacturers, because rebates come from manufacturers. So, but yes, the PBMs will want to place on the formulary drugs that are highly rebated. Rebated higher.
Well, it's a crazy system, because you have the pharmaceutical companies who have an incentive, and then you have the PBMs who have an incentive, right? And then you've got these pharmacies that are just trying to give drugs to people.
They're literally
right?
just trying to exist.
And then the employer who's helping, with the entire plan and, is a fiduciary for their employees. And it forces an employer to be in a position where they have to do all of their own research and be a master of this information while not being an expert on it at the same time.
Yeah. And the interesting thing with that is, like, sometimes it's just what happens. So yes, plan sponsors need to be educated. They need to understand the provisions of the CAA. They need to understand why it's important to have broker compensation. And they really need to understand what it means to work with vendors that are actively working in your best interest. For me, and this is only because of the type of work that we do, I can say this, I really think a plan sponsor that's like listening to this and like, this is so overwhelming. Why, like, keep me with Blue Cross? Like, I don't give a shit, right? My costs can continue to go 5, 10, 15%. And maybe that's cool for you, but that's probably not cool for your employees, honestly. But the one fundamental mindset shift is just, are the people working for me making more when I pay more? That's it. That is it. And if you could just take that one step and work with somebody that is willing to sacrifice or willing to put their fees at risk to better your plan performance, that itself will take care of most of the problems that you have, because that person or that entity is going to be actively working in your best interest and reading that contract language and looking at those claims and looking for options to redirect and lower the cost of care, because their fee and them working with you is dependent on that success. If you don't want to learn about all of this shit, then just understand that. You know what I mean? Like, I do recommend that you learn about all of this shit, but work with people that understand all of it and are benefiting only when you benefit. And I think that is the simplest takeaway.
Yeah. I mean, the current solution is hire a good partner, right? Like, hire a good vendor. And right now, how that works, say you work with Ethos or anyone like us, is, we give you this solemn vow, and it's in the contracts, right, that we're going to do our due diligence. But it's not regulated in any way. Is that something that you think will happen in the future? Do you think that is,
Yes.
Is that something that would be good?
Yes, I think that Donovan did a presentation on this a couple of years ago. It's super interesting. He showed like the transition on the 401k side that he came from and when this rule was going to come out, called like the fiduciary rule, where 401k and retirement advisors were going to have to basically act in the best interest of those that they served, and the whole industry freaked out and was like opposing this law, and he couldn't figure out, like, why do people not want to do this? I do believe that eventually we will have that same standard. There will be some type of fiduciary, that whether it's a designation, and that it's starting to, a lot of educational companies are getting smart and starting to like apply their own designations, right? Like their own fiduciary designation. For example, we have one through the Validation Institute, which is great, and it's a step in the right direction, but it's not a mandated legal license or requirement at this point. Should it be? Heck yeah. But guess what? like everything else in this world of employee benefits, the plan sponsor has the control. The plan sponsor has the power. The plan sponsor has the leverage. All they have to do is use it. Guess what that means? It's like using your dollar as a vote, right? Simply as like a consumer. Am I going to go to Walgreens or am I going to go to the local pharmacy? Am I going to go to the huge grocery store or the mom and pop shop? Whatever. Am I supporting Amazon or am I going to get my ass out the door and like go to a small business? The same is true when it comes to the vendors that you pick in your business, whether it's the printer company that you're choosing or the stapler company. Like, look at your health plan. Every single vendor that you pick is a choice, and you can align that vendor to your success or you can continue to get screwed.
This is kind of the thing with PBMs, that if I can say I empathize in any way, it would be this, or any part of this, right? Which is, let's go back to your stapler business, which is what I'm going to start, by the way. We're now starting a stapler gig. It's going to be great. Yeah. 15 ARR overnight. Let's go. Here's the thing is, this stapler business, I don't have a requirement to explain my margin to my customers and my clients, right? Wholesale or retail. It's not a requirement. However, there is somewhat of a distinction. Like if we get into the word fiduciary, which predominantly and originally applied more on the investment side, right? Showing that there isn't a conflict and that you will do your due diligence and what that money is and where and how it exists.
Mm-hmm.
And it's clear and transparent to everyone that, I bought this stock, I made 10%, here's the money, and you got this other 10%, and we're square. And brokers have to do this, right? I mean, we have, or at least we choose to. We explain kind of how the model works, what our things are, and why doesn't that work, for PBMs? Just seems unfair. All right. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything else on that, but I think we could probably rant about PBMs for the entire day, I think.
Yeah. I'll have one quick closing comment on that. And then I know we'll probably be wrapping up soon because we've been going a minute. Also, Austin, I think we should make this a thing and do this like once a month. But on the PBM side, just to close out for plan sponsors, your takeaway with this legislation is to ensure that I would ask that my contract is compliant with CAA 26. If you are working with any of the big three, but if you are, that everything that's been being put out in these settlements is actually happening. And remember, the truth is there's these vendors are going to find loopholes. These fees are going to be recouped in a different way with a different name somehow. So it's not just enough to say, hey, please make sure that my contract is compliant with the CAA of 26. You actually have to read it, and you actually have to have a partner that knows where to find where they're actually putting the dollars, because they will. And we've already started seeing it. We know where to look, but you have to ask those questions and don't blindly rely on the people around you. And even when your vendors are aligned, right? Like there is our webinar next month, for example, it's on scorecards for vendors and KPIs. How do we hold vendors accountable to not only the contract language, but key performance indicators that at the end of the year will say, yes, this is a good vendor. This is somebody that I want to renew. What does that relationship look like? What are the things that they had to do? What are the deliverables that had to happen for us to say, yes, we want to renew this relationship? It can't be instead of what I see most of the time with new clients coming on to Ethos or prospects that I speak to. But the account manager is really nice. Good.
He's my boy, right. I like him.
Yeah. Like okay, that's the baseline. We need, somebody should be nice, but like, are they doing all these other things that they're supposed to do? Are you in compliance? Do you have risk unknown, etc.? So I'm super, super excited for that webinar because we've been rolling out these scorecards to employers on their fiduciary quarterly meetings, because Ethos has we have our own fiduciary framework that we've developed over the last decade. And Basically, it's taking all the tenets of fiduciary responsibility under ERISA and putting it into a formalized governance structure. And we do 80% of the work on it. The plan sponsor really just has to attend and give the scores for their vendors and talk through things, et cetera. But it's been so cool to see some of the reactions around these vendor relationships because, for example, a recent one, we just took over a client late last year and they were singing praises about their carriers and their vendors and how much they love them. And I was like, great. Yep. No need to change anything at this point. Right. And so the scorecards, before we got involved, they would we would rate them all 5s. I was like, awesome. I can't wait to work with them. And then we start working with them and it was like, oh my God, we literally have plan documents that are incorrect. We have funding happening in the wrong accounts. We have members that aren't even on the plan anymore that are being allowed to use the insurance. Like, what is going on? This is a mess. And and then now the feedback has been, we just had a quarterly fiduciary committee and that vendor was rated with 1s and 2s. And they're like, we would have never known that any of this was happening unless we were being forced to evaluate them through this new fiduciary lens, right? Because it was just, I love my account manager. She's great. She responds to me. Literally the bare minimum.
Right. I mean, okay. Yeah. I mean, we'll put all these webinars in the description for you guys to check out. But if you are a decision maker for your benefits in your workplace, or you're a part of it in any way, these are the 2 things that I think we want to leave you with, was what Chelsea is talking about. I think there is no company too large that couldn't look at a different model, right? I think we run into that a lot where we're like, oh, we're this big enterprise thing, so we can't possibly look at a different way of viewing this.
Usually do it worse.
They usually are getting ripped off the most, is my understanding.
Austin Townend and I last week were talking about it. The clients that we've taken on that have 10,000 plus employees are less innovative, more traditional, more resistant to change, and doing worse, paying more than their mid-market competitors with 200 to 800, 1,000 employees. And it blew my mind when we had this conversation. So I'm like, you're absolutely right. It's so interesting because there's just that assumption, right? Oh, the bigger companies have more purchasing power, more market leverage, more resources, more people on staff. It's cost or size and quality is not related.
That's actually, it's our favorite kind of new company to work with, are these larger companies, for that reason, because you do have the buying power, you just don't know it. Yes. And I think that's the huge part of it. And that's kind of what we do, is show you how much, let's try to say a lame thing, like how much savings we're going to have, but how much of a better plan you're going to get and how much your employees are going to benefit, and your budget. So,
and how much leverage you have that you're not using, to just sum it up, like how much power you have. And that's always been my favorite part about what we do, is when you can kind of take the blinders off and be like, hey, I know that it's worked like this for you for a really, really long time, but guess what? There is a different way to look at this problem. And here's the lens, right? Literally, it's how do we reduce risk? How do we avoid risk? That's the conversations that we're having. And it just yields such better outcomes versus how do I transfer risk? That's what a lot of companies are talking about, is the transferring of a full risk to an insurance company. And that's the most expensive thing that you can do with risk.
Yep, totally. Yeah. So employers, there's no company too big. And then also there's no relationship that is too perfect that it can't be reviewed. And
100%.
so,
I like that. Good takeaways.
Yeah. So I think those are our 2 things for the day.
I think so too. I know we had more to get to, but
yeah, I think we're going to call it here, guys. I really enjoyed getting into a lot of the compliance, and I hope that you, as the viewers, the audience, the listeners, enjoyed it as well. It sounds like this was a knock out of the park for Chelsea. So maybe we'll do this again. This could be a thing. I'm excited to be more a part of the podcast. But for everyone listening and watching, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Austin.
Thanks, Chelsea.